Hi, thanks for stopping by. As I mentioned in my last review video, I normally record audiobooks for the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, but because of the enforced closure of non-essential businesses over the last couple of weeks, I have been unable to do that, and I'm kind of itching to be doing some reading. So I thought I would alleviate some of the symptoms of my madness by recording some readings to put up on my channel for you to enjoy, and this will be the first of those. Now, my choice today was, for this initial one, was informed by actually another way that I'm trying to alleviate the symptoms of boredom that my sort of unintentional house arrest has led to. A group of Facebook friends and I, a friend put together a group that are doing readings of Shakespeare. So we're gathering via Zoom video conference to read it's been a couple of weeks so far that we've been doing this Shakespeare plays, the most recent of which was A Midsummer Night's Dream. So I decided for my first reading video to put up here that I would read the Midsummer Night's Dream from this, which is Twisted Tales from Shakespeare by Richard Armour. Now this is a very old book. It was the copyright in my edition, and my edition's a third printing. The copyright is from 1957, and to the best of my knowledge, this book is out of print. I have done some searches and only been able to find you can get used copies off of places like Amazon and eBay and places like that, but to the best of my knowledge, the book is out of print. Now, as I said, this edition is copyrighted in 1957. I got it from my father. He actually got it from his, which means that this book has now been in my family for 3 generations, which I think is fairly interesting. Richard Armour was a Shakespearean scholar and humorist, and the book is comprised of abridged retellings of several of Shakespeare's plays. Let me see what all is in here. The full title is Twisted Tales from Shakespeare, in which Shakespeare's best-known plays are presented in a new light, the old light having blown a fuse, together with introductions, questions, appendices, and other critical apparatus intended to contribute to a clearer misunderstanding of the subject. Dedicated to the memory of Shakespeare, which was certainly better than mine, and to all those who, having given or taken a required course in Shakespeare, know that it is more blessed to give. So that's a small taste of the kind of humor that runs through this book. It's British humor, it's old-fashioned humor, it's from the 1950s, so just as we get into it, be aware of that. But the plays that he skewers are Hamlet, Macbeth, A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I'm going to read momentarily, Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, and Othello. So, let us begin with A Midsummer Night's Dream. And each play starts with a brief introduction and ends with some questions. So we'll start with the introduction, obviously. A Midsummer Night's Dream is often selected for study in school because although it is about love, it is such a clean play. The reason for this may be, as one critic has said, that it is bathed in a flood of exquisite lyric verse. Liquid verse is the term used by the same writer elsewhere, while commenting on the watered-down style. Moreover, though its heroes and heroines sleep side by side in the woods, they are not only innocent, but too tired and confused to take advantage of the situation. As one of the most complicated plays Shakespeare ever wrote, it gives the teacher a sense of superiority to straighten it out in front of spellbound students. The date of A Midsummer Night's Dream is uncertain, but scholars assure us that it could not have been written as early as 1565, when Shakespeare was only 1 year old and preoccupied with learning to write simple sonnets. Nor could it have been written as late as 1618, when he had been buried for 2 years and his inspiration had probably dried up. Whatever the precise date, internal evidence, notably some bits of tobacco discovered between the pages of the first quarto, indicates that Sir Walter Raleigh had already returned from the Virginia colony. Quite obviously, A Midsummer Night's Dream was written for the court, where people could be ordered to attend. It is possible that the play was meant to compliment Queen Elizabeth, who could identify herself with either Titania, the Queen of the Fairies, or Hippolyta, the Queen of the Amazons, depending on whether she felt dainty or muscular at the moment. There may even have been a veiled hint that Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, could make good use of a love potion. The plot is interwoven of several threads. These were taken from Chaucer, Plutarch, Ovid, and an outgrown doublet that Shakespeare inherited from Edmund Spenser. The story of the fairies is Old Hat, borrowed from the Earl of Derby. The central theme, it is often pointed out, is the irrational nature of love, but let us not overlook the possibility of the irrational nature of Shakespeare. And what, the reader may ask, of the characters? If they seem a bit wooden, it may be that Shakespeare wished them to feel at home in the forest, where most of the action takes place. One question, never satisfactorily answered by scholars, is this: did Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream result from something he ate? A Midsummer Night's Dream. Theseus lays down the law. The scene of the play is Athens and Environs, two cities in ancient Greece. Theseus, the Duke of Athens, has won Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons, with his sword. They met on the battlefield, and it was love at first sight when they glimpsed each other's bulging biceps. He asked her to be his, and pressed his sword against her throat, tenderly, not wanting to cause any unsightly scars. She swallowed hard and assented. As the play opens, it's only 4 days until their wedding, and Theseus keeps looking at his watch. "Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace," says Theseus happily. He is lolling on the royal sofa, idly watching his bride-to-be work out with barbells. In accordance with the custom of the day, Theseus is planning some entertainment for his wedding night, although this seems somewhat unimaginative. At any rate, he sends Philostrate, his master of the revels, to fetch some revelry, and maybe a little pomp and circumstance. At this moment, Aegeus, an Athenian nobleman, rushes breathlessly into court. The Duke also seems to be a judge, followed by his daughter Hermia, possibly a misprint for Hernia, and her suitors Demetrius and Lysander. It is impossible to tell Demetrius from Lysander. Don't bother to try. "Full of vexation come I," announces Aegeus, who has a swollen look. What's troubling him is that Hermia wants to marry Lysander, while he insists that she marry Demetrius. Hermia, for obvious reasons, is under a strain. "That man hath bewitched the bosom of my child," he declares, pointing an accusing finger at Lysander, but not explaining the anatomical reference. Hermia's bosom looks perfectly all right, or at least she manages to put up a good front. And furthermore, he charges he hath by moonlight at her window sung. Poor Aegeus, remembering all that caterwauling, is too upset to care about word order. Theseus, wishing to dispose of the case quickly so he can give his full attention to Hippo, rules that Hermia must either marry Demetrius, as her father desires, or spend her life in a nunnery, where there is small chance of her marrying anybody. With Theseus, everything is either black or white, which results, among other things, in his being bored by sunsets. He gives Hermia 4 days to decide, and sweeps out. The place needed it. Away to the woods. Left alone, Hermia and Lysander bewail their fate. "Ay me, the course of true love never did run smooth," sighs Lysander, thereby slipping quietly into Bartlett's familiar quotations. Then an idea comes to him. He has an aunt who lives in a town some distance away, where the marriage laws are more lax than in Athens. The town isn't named, but it's probably somewhere in Nevada. "Steal forth tomorrow night," he tells Hermia, "and in the wood there will I stay for thee." How he is going to get into the wood he doesn't explain. Perhaps the explanation lies in the fact that he's a bore. While they are talking over their plans, Helena approaches. She is the large, statuesque type who can see what is going on at a parade, and is always looking for tall men. Demetrius is tall, and Helena is mad for him. But Demetrius is mad for Hermia, who is mad for Lysander. And there you have the situation, BLP, before love potion, of A Midsummer Night's Dream. "Oh, teach me how you sway the motions of Demetrius' heart," begs Helena, who would like to quicken his pulse just once. "I frown upon him, yet he loves me still," replies Hermia, who is as baffled as anybody. She doesn't want any part of Demetrius, even the choicest. She cheers up Helena, however, by telling her that she and Lysander are meeting in the woods the next night and going away from Athens forever. This will leave the field and the woods clear for Helena. "Until tomorrow night, then," says Lysander, waving goodbye with an embroidered handkerchief, "when Phoebe doth behold her silver visage in the watery glass, decking with liquid pearl the bladed grass." He is given to ornate speech, and as far as Helena is concerned, Hermia can have him. "Farewell, sweet playfellow," says Hermia cheerily to Helena, "and good luck with Demetrius." Helena, elated, decides to tell Demetrius of the forthcoming rendezvous in the woods, and then be on hand to catch him on the rebound. The harder they fall, she theorizes, the higher they bounce. A little theater group. An odd lot of people are assembled in Peter Quince's carpenter shop in another part of Athens. They are Quince, Nick Bottom, a weaver, especially when he is drunk, Francis Flute, a bellows mender, Robert Starveling, a tailor, and Tom Snout, a tinker, though we are not told what he tinks about. Also in the company, naturally enough, is Snug, a joiner. If the names of these people seem rather peculiar, one must remember, as Shakespeare didn't, that they are Greeks. These rude mechanicals, as they are called, although they are no ruder than the others, are gathered to practice a play, Pyramus and Thisbe, which they are going to put on for Theseus as part of his wedding night entertainment. Bottom wants to play all the parts and does a good deal of bellowing. If this keeps up, the bellows mender may come in handy. Finally, everyone having been assigned his part, Quince tells them to be ready for a rehearsal in the woods the next night. It's beginning to look as if we won't be able to see the woods for the people. Enter the fairies. The next night, also in the woods, Puck, alias Robin Goodfellow, and a fairy meet. Puck is a merry sprite with quite a reputation for what he considers screamingly funny pranks, like hiding in people's drinks to give them an extra kick, or pretending to be a chair and upsetting the occupant. It's his job to keep Oberon, king of the fairies, in stitches. "How now, spirit," asks Puck, "whither wander you?" "Over hill, over dale, through brush, through briar, over park, over pale, through flood, through fire," says the fairy, obviously a letter carrier whom nothing stays from completion of his or her appointed rounds. At the moment, however, the fairy is busy looking for dewdrops, hanging pearls in cowslips' ears, and doing other odd jobs you would have to be a fairy to appreciate. Oberon with his train and Titania, the fairy queen, with her train, enter from opposite directions. The place is beginning to look like Grand Central Station. Oberon and Titania have been sleeping in separate acorn cups because Titania has a young lad among her attendants whom Oberon wants her to give up. It may be that Oberon suspects he isn't really a fairy. "Ill met by moonlight," says Oberon grumpily when he sees his wife. He enjoys his moonshine more when she isn't around. They exchange some sharp words, Titania charging Oberon with having an affair with Hippolyta, which Oberon, in view of his size, is hardly up to, and Oberon insinuating that Titania has been dallying and possibly dillying with Theseus, who couldn't see her without a magnifying glass. Overcome by jealousy, they don't realize how small they are being. Because of a shortage of actors and actresses only a half-inch tall, the fairies are usually played by ordinary-sized people. After Titania leaves with her train in a huff, and a chuff-chuff, Oberon plots to discomfit her, leaving her without a comfit to her name. He orders Puck, who can go anywhere in a trice, the fairy tricycle, to hustle off and fetch a certain flower, the juice of which, when rubbed on the eyelids of a sleeping person, will make him fall madly in love with the next creature he sees. What would happen if one eye were anointed and the other not, is thought-provoking. "I'll put a girdle round the earth and..." the trick, of course, is to rub the sleeper's eyelids without waking him. "I'll put a girdle round about the earth in 40 minutes, boasts Puck, zooming off with a corset in his hands. Left to himself, Oberon chuckles about how he will use the juice of the flower on Titania when she is asleep, and how she will then fall in love with the first creature of the forest she sees on waking. Just then he hears someone coming. "I am invisible," he says, "else we might not have known, and I will overhear their conference. There is no honor among fairies." Demetrius comes running into the woods, with Helena hot on his heels. "Hence, get thee gone. I love thee not, therefore pursue me not," he says harshly. He is not one to beat around the bush, especially with a girl he doesn't care for. "And even for that do I love you the more. I am your spaniel," says Helena, flapping her ears prettily. "I'll run from thee and hide me in the brakes," threatens Demetrius. The brakes will stop her, he thinks to himself cunningly. Oberon, who has been watching the whole thing, turns out to be a bit of a matchmaker, although among his tiny people he previously has had to match featherweights. He thinks it would be fun to turn the race around and have Demetrius chasing Helena. As soon as he gets that flower, he'll be rubbing it on many an eyelid. Oberon fires Titania. When Puck returns with the magic flower, Oberon takes it from him, and without so much as a thank you, launches upon a famous speech. "I know a bank where the wild thyme blows," he says, all the while running the flower through a juicer, "where oxlips and the nodding violet grows. There, he is certain, Titania will be found, nodding with the violets." He gives Puck a little of the juice to fix up Demetrius, and he himself hies to the bank, where he believes Titania to be deposited. When he arrives, Titania is getting ready for bed. "Sing me now asleep," she commands, and the fairies sing a lullaby that knocks her out as effectively as a sleeping pill. While she is slumbering, Oberon sneaks in and drops some juice on her eyelids, hoping the first thing she sees when she wakes is something good and repulsive, like an ounce, a pard, or a boar with rough whiskers. Shortly afterward, Quince, Bottom, and the rest of the mechanicals assemble in the woods to rehearse their play. Luckily for the plot, they pick a place close to where Titania lies sleeping, and Puck is watching them from behind some bushes. "What hempen homespuns have we swaggering here, so near the cradle of the queen?" Puck asks himself. Always up to some prank, he puts an ass's head on top of Bottom when he is off stage, and when the weaver comes in to recite his lines, the rest of the players flee in terror. The first thing Titania sees when she awakens is Bottom. "What angel wakes me from my flowery bed?" she cries in ecstasy. "Come, sit thee down upon this bed, while I thy amiable cheeks do coy, and stick musk roses in thy sleek smooth head, and kiss thy fair large ears." She can't seem to get over those ears, not without a ladder. Bottom takes it all in stride, not being one to question his good fortune, even when Titania gives him 4 fairies named Peas Blossom, Cobweb, Moth, and Mustard Seed. These could be nicknames, let us hope. They take care of his everyday wants, such as feeding him apricots, fetching him jewels from the deep, and fanning moonbeams from his eyes. Bottom has never had such service before, even at the annual Weaver's Clam Bake. "Let's have the tongs and the bones," he suggests. Crude musical instruments, according to the authorities. Apparently the bones were picked up with the tongs to avoid using one's fingers. And then, when thirst overtakes him, he calls for a bottle of hay, perhaps planning to drink it through a straw. Finally, Bottom and Titania lie down on a bed of flowers, from which the thorns and thistles have been carefully removed. Bottom accepts everything nonchalantly, though he complains mildly that there are no sheets. "Sleep thou, and I will wind thee in my arms," says Titania soothingly. While they sleep, Oberon, who is watching from a thicket, dances with wild abandon, a disreputable friend of his, and laughs hysterically. Utter confusion. In another part of the woods, Lysander and Hermia, who have lost their way, lie down to get some rest. "One turf shall serve as pillow for us both," suggests Lysander, hoping to economize, but Hermia modestly insists that they leave a few feet of grass between them. It's a turf break for Lysander, but he takes it like a man, i.e., none too well. While they are sleeping, Puck happens by. He thinks Lysander must be the Athenian whom Oberon sent him after, and Hermia must be the poor girl who is chasing him fruitlessly. So he anoints Lysander's eyelids and is off. As might be expected by anyone who has read The Comedy of Errors or The Two Gentlemen of Verona, Helena, who is chasing Demetrius, stumbles on Lysander. The woods are full of reclining people, and she should have watched where she was going. Awaking with damp eyelids, Lysander gropes about for his umbrella. He sees Helena, falls immediately in love, and starts after her. "I would run through fire for thy sweet sake," he exclaims, knowing he is safe enough in these green woods. No sooner have they gone than Hermia wakes up, notices Lysander isn't there, and tears off into the forest, fortunately in the right direction. So now we have Demetrius being chased by Helena, being chased by Lysander, being chased by Hermia. Seldom have such a chaste lot of young people been found in the woods anywhere. Puck has got things into a pretty mess with the juice of that little old flower. It's the sort of thing that should be sold only on prescription. Everybody sleeps. Hermia, Lysander, Helena, and Demetrius get increasingly mixed up, as does the reader. Hermia and Helena, who in the first act were two lovely berries molded on one stem, have become detached, each with a stem of her own. "Thou painted maypole," says Hermia, appraising the tall, symmetrical Helena. "You counterfeit, you puppet, you," retorts Helena, trying to choose the exact word to describe her undersized rival. "You dwarf, you bead, you acorn," adds Lysander helpfully. However, Puck manages to avoid mayhem by leading everybody around the woods in a wild goose chase. Thus no blood is shed, not even the goose's. He finally has all four lovers back where they started from and asleep on individual mossy beds. "Lord, what fools these mortals be!" exclaims Puck as he looks at them lying there. He seems to forget that he was none too accurate with the love juice. Oberon, thinking this little joke has gone far enough, the audience usually thinks so several scenes earlier, gets Puck to straighten out all the love affairs with another round of potion. "Crush this herb into Lysander's eye," he instructs him, losing patience and getting a little rough. "Jack shall have his Jill," agrees Puck, who understandably has lost track of who's who by this time. Insomnia seems to have been unknown in those days, or else it was all that chasing through the woods and the outdoor air that did it. Anyhow, at this point in the play, virtually everyone is asleep, and the reader may wish to take a little nap himself. The Awakening. Oberon begins to feel sorry for his fairy wife Titania, and touches her eyes, meanwhile chanting, "Be thou as thou wast wont to be." She wants to be awake, and very shortly is. When she is shown the sleeping bottom, of whom she has been so enamored, Titania is mortified. Even after his ass's head is removed, there is little improvement. "Sound! Music!" cries Oberon. "Come, my queen, take hands with me, and let's rock the ground." Then Oberon and Titania dance what is probably the first rock and roll, and afterward promise to be friends forevermore, even though married. As dawn is about to break, the fairies get the hell out of there. They know how silly they look in the daylight, and anyhow need to rest up for the next night's shenanigans. Theseus, Hippo, and Aegeus now arrive, dressed for the hunt, fit to kill. "Good morrow, friends," Theseus politely greets the recumbent forms of Helena, Hermia, Lysander, and Demetrius and Bottom. When he gets no response, he leans over and yells into their ears, "Good morrow, friends!" "Bid the huntsmen wake them with their horns," Theseus commands, seeing the need for drastic measures. Thereupon several deep-chested men come in, place their trumpets, tubas, and other wind instruments against the sleeper's ears, and blast away. The lovers stir and ultimately awake, acting as if they have been drugged. They have. We wish we could say at this point, bottoms up, but he sleeps on through another 60 lines of exciting dialogue. All is soon explained, everything is forgiven, and it is evident that the play is really over. However, Quince and his friends have been rehearsing so hard in the forest that Shakespeare felt he owed them a performance. Hence the fifth act. The Wedding Party. On the night of Theseus' wedding, all the lords and ladies are gathered to help him while away the hours until bedtime. Philostrate, the master of revels, who hasn't been heard from since Act 1, Scene 1, line 15, introduces Quince and his players, who are to put on Pyramus and Thisbe. The audience expects the worst and isn't disappointed. In brief, which is the best way, the play is about two lovers who meet in a hole in the wall. Though their love has not prospered, something having come between them, the wall. See also Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare loved walls. So they plan a rendezvous in a jollier place, a tomb. Thisbe gets there first and is frightened off by a lion, those Greek zookeepers were very careless, which pounces on her mantle and makes a bloody mess of it. After the lion leaves, Pyramus comes in, sees the bloody mantle, and thinking Thisbe dead, stabs himself repeatedly. His dagger is the latest model repeater. Then Thisbe returns, finds her lover dead, and stabs herself. Both of these young people play their parts up to the hilt. Come to think of it, the whole of Pyramus and Thisbe is a lot like Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare was such a thoroughgoing plagiarist that he frequently stole from himself. Theseus and the others laugh uproariously through the whole tragic performance. They take a superior attitude toward the actors, probably having seen the play at the Parthenon with the original cast. But it helps pass the time. Although it can have taken only a few minutes, Theseus says it is now midnight and time for bed. The Duke and his party having gone bedward, Puck, Oberon, Titania, and the fairies take over and sing an itty-bitty ditty. They also try to dance, but trip the light fantastic and fall flat on their faces. The last one left on the stage is Puck. He asks everyone who liked the show to applaud, and exits in a moment of absolute silence. And there are some questions that follow each of these. So the questions on A Midsummer Night's Dream. 1. A Midsummer Night's Dream has been called Shakespeare's first undisputed masterpiece. Would you like to know by whom? 2. What is your idea of a wild time? 3. Boredom is said to have been translated. What was his name in the original Greek? 4. Comment ecstatically on the poetic qualities of Puck's speech, I go, look how I go. Just how far gone was he? 5. Did you know that in Irish folklore, Oberon is O'Brien? 6. Why do you suppose, with all the attractive Greek women around, Theseus married an Amazon? Could the best-looking Grecian ladies have been too busy posing for vases? 7. Do you think Boredom needed Puck's help to make an ass of himself? 8. What would you do if your mother had named you Peas Blossom, Cobweb, Moth, or Mustard Seed? Would you really? 9. Demetrius speaks of Helena's lips as those kissing cherries. How fantastic can a lover get? 10. Suggest a more appropriate title for this play. For instance, Much Ado About Nothing, or All's Well That Ends. Right, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed the chance to read this for you. As I said earlier, I've had this book. This book has been in my family for 3 generations. I've had it since I was fairly young, and when I was much, much younger, a lot of the jokes just went right over my head because they are, very old-fashioned British adult humor. So as like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid who obviously had not read Shakespeare yet at that point, most of that stuff was way over my head. But as I've gotten older, I've come to understand most of it. And this book has just always brought a smile to my face and always made me chuckle a little bit. So I certainly enjoyed reading this recap of A Midsummer Night's Dream for you, and I hope you enjoyed listening and watching as well. Watch this space for another reading video that I hope to get up at some point, and keep your fingers crossed that we will get through this soon and safely. I hope you're staying safe and taking care of yourself, and I will see you next time. Take care.